think so, but I'm going to say thank you. I really do appreciate the work that ADVAN is doing. I think we've moved a long way from when I started in marketing, and just to have bodies of this nature that really mentor, share knowledge, advocacy, but really try to build and be stronger in our professions and stronger leaders. So thank you for the work that you're doing. So our first speaker is Mr. Segun Ogunsanya. He's currently the Chief Executive Officer and the MD of Airtel Nigeria. Everyone would have received his profile, but I'm impressed. And so I'm going to go through some of the highlights of his career. Like I said, he's currently the MD and the CEO of Airtel. He's an engineer and a chartered accountant. He has over 27 years experience across a variety of sectors and countries across the world. He joined Airtel in 2012. Since then, he's repositioned the company to become profitable. Today, it's the second largest telecommunications company by revenue, serving over 50 million customers. Before he joined Airtel, he was with the Coca-Cola company. He started off in finance and then just transitioned into a number of senior leadership roles. When he left as the managing director and CEO. But what really stood out for me was that he was the first African to be appointed in this role. As we know, Coca-Cola and Airtel, they have significant advertising budgets. They are located across the world.
How we actually do is during normal times. During normal times, what do we do as leaders? We paint a vision as to what we want to achieve. We agree on our purpose. We set goals. We set milestones for our people. We design a roadmap. And we get a good team. We get the wrong guys off the bus, put the right people into the bus, put the right people in the right seats. These are very visible outcomes that we are very familiar with. And we reward the people for delivering with debrief failures. And we keep on innovating, we test the boundary. These are the normal things we do during normal times. But when we're in a crisis, what do we do differently? When things are not normal, how do we ask? Because everyone in this symposium is a leader. What do we do differently? I'm going to share a number of concepts with you. They work for me in my previous lives. They're still working for me as well. About 9 or 10 of them. And I'm going to start with the one that is very, very fundamental. When you're in a crisis, when there's a turbulence, the first thing you do is to confront reality. Don't deny the turbulence. Don't deny the crisis. It's good to be faithful. It's good to have faith that things are going to be all right. But don't act only on the faith. You must do things other than faith. I've listened to so many people riding the storm. Let's ride it. You don't ride the storm in the company. You must confront the reality on the ground. So my first way of dealing with the crisis is to be very clear about the facts I'm dealing with. What are the issues I'm dealing with? I don't let emotions declare my judgment. Sometimes you get very emotional, but that's not going to solve any problem. And I'm not by any reason saying you shouldn't have faith in whatever you believe in. Faith is very, very important for our spirituality. But above all, you must not deny the facts of what you are dealing with. If you're dealing with a foreign exchange crisis, you are dealing with a foreign exchange crisis. If you're dealing with a very, very massive pandemic like COVID, you are dealing with COVID. You must find all the facts about COVID. So my first advice on how to lead during a turbulence is to confront the facts of what you are dealing with. And for you to do this, very effectively, you must have this ability to understand complex and rapidly changing circumstances accurately. Because in a crisis, things change very, very quickly. You just can't default to your normal mode. You must be able to handle very complex situations and have the change very quickly over time. So that's my second advice. Be on top of the issues, know how to respond when issues change very quickly. The third one is about what you do very well, a lot more than I can say, about communicating. A leader cannot over-communicate during a crisis. It's a major imperative for you to go through the crisis. Communicate, communicate, communicate. There's no other way of ending a crisis than just letting your people know you know what the problems are, leading them to the solution, using their collective wisdom to get to a solution. And making sure they understand what they do every day. Every little thing, every big thing they do every day, how does it contribute to the final purpose of the business? So as a leader, whether you're a CMO, whether you sales leader, whether you're a CEO, it's very, very important, much more important during a crisis, to be able to communicate to your folks. Don't let them lose the essence of your purpose. What exactly is your purpose? What are you set up to do despite the crisis? And whatever they do every day, how does it end up adding something to your overall purpose? When I talk to my team during the COVID crisis, I keep telling them, what is our main purpose? We're here to connect people with their passion or with their livelihood. We're selling recharge, to put it very mildly. We're selling airtime. We sell connectivity, connecting people through voice, through internet. That's our purpose. So whether COVID or no COVID, if you're able to understand this, that's the essence of our business, we're able to know what we need to do differently every day to overcome challenges like COVID. The first thing I like to talk about during a crisis is motivating your people. There's a lot of fear out when there's a crisis. How do you get your team engaged? What is the right chord you need to strike with your people? You need to find that chord. And the chord is different for different people. Maybe somebody's spirituality, maybe somebody's love for mankind. It might be money, whatever it is. Just make sure you treat people differently during a crisis and appeal to whatever motivates them to deliver their best, especially the ones that you really want to keep. But again, don't deny the facts. Don't paint a wrong picture. Let them know you value them, but find what makes them go the extra mile. Is it their love for mankind, wanting to do something for people? Or is it money? Is it training? Find whatever that thing is and offer it to them if it's within your value system. I mean, April was a very bad month for us, for most telcos in this country. That was the height of the lockdown. Voice revenues tanked. Before data finally came to the rest, it took some weeks. But I had to keep my team engaged because they've never seen that kind of decline before. I've never seen it before. When revenue just crashed all of a sudden because people are not making phone calls because they're stuck at home with their folks. There is no point in calling somebody when the person is right next to you. But I mean, from a few weeks after, we figured another way to let people have access to recharge. We figured ways of letting them buy data. And by the second month, data revenue kicked in and we were able to really ride the storm. My fifth advice is to teach your people new skills to survive in the new normal. Survival is the least common denominator. And that shouldn't be your expectation. Thriving must be your end game. You must thrive during a crisis. If you survive, you just maintain the status quo. That's also essential, by the way. But the goal of any business is to thrive. So you must just find ways, new skills that you need to teach your people so that they can thrive. I know Apple's valuation almost doubled during the crisis. Korean companies are doing very well. Remember, knowledge perish. So you must be able to teach your people new skills for them to become relevant. If you're able to communicate with your customers online today, you're good. If you're unable to, you are dead. You're not even done, you are dead. So how do we teach our people new ways of reaching the customers? It's also very important. My sixth term in advice is about integrity. You just have to maintain your integrity all of it as a leader, as a follower, as a person. Because an honest person or an honest company can never be blackmailed by any crisis or be shamed by any crisis. And for me personally, when I'm about to take a decision, I use 3 clear lenses. The lenses are: 1, is it profitable to the business I'm running? Number 2, is the process a legal process? Number 3, is it ethical? But you can actually have something legal but not ethical. You can't even tell your children about what you're doing. So when I use those 3 lenses and the issues pass, it's a yes for me. Is the outcome going to be profitable for the business? Is the process I'm following legal? Am I being ethical? If I cross those 3 of this, I'm good to go. So integrity is always very key as a person, as a company, because in that way, no crisis can shame you. No crisis can blackmail you. My 7th point, and I'm sure we're going to have a debate amongst us, so I'm rushing through, is to always go beyond your business. You must support the vulnerable. It is very essential for the strong to protect the weak, for the rich to support the poor. Otherwise, the ecosystem cannot survive. During the crisis, we donated money to various causes, to the various governments. We donated the testing center to the state government. As I speak now, we're actually building or refurbishing a major infection treatment center in Louth. It's a massive block. We're renovating the old block. It's part of being a good citizen. So in your various ways as well, find ways of doing good stuff, even during the crisis. And my 8th point is about being a human being. You must be able to voice your fears to your people, reveal your vulnerabilities, admit your errors, your mistakes during a crisis, because you just can't get it right during the crisis. And that's part of being, after all, nobody's God. If you're not God, there's no shame in telling your people, you made a few mistakes, you got it right now, but tell them what you're afraid of. Share your vulnerabilities and let them know you are not God, so that they know that it's okay to make mistakes during a crisis. Then finally, you have to conserve cash. Cash is king. Money, naira, dollar, whatever you trade it with. You must keep as much as possible during a crisis. You cannot save your way out of a crisis, but after the crisis, you need cash to really do a lot of investment anyway. So do what is absolutely necessary. Anything that is going to give you more revenue, money behind it. But anything that is discretionary, my own advice and my own philosophy is to conserve cash, during a crisis. I don't spend as much as I normally spend if there's a crisis. And that's where to really come out of the crisis much better than you go inside the crisis. So these are the 8-9 points I'd like to share with you. I understand there's time for question and answer. I don't want this to be a lecture. I want this to be a discussion. I would take a number of questions, as many as you want. And hopefully I would be able to enrich your knowledge. And you're also going to be able to enrich my knowledge as well, so that we all leave this forum equally blessed. So once again, I say a big thank you to ADVAN Leadership for inviting me to this forum. And I commend everyone. I wish you a happy new year. It's never too late to wish anyone a happy new year. So, gentlemen and ladies, that's the end of my formal discussion with you. I'll take some questions, and hopefully we would get some right answers from both of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. While we wait for everyone to send in questions, I will kickstart asking my own question. How do you, or how have you managed to motivate people, even inspire people at a time when, well, I speak for myself. I know I struggled last year because I was human, had challenges at home, had challenges at work as a result of the pandemic. And how do you sort of motivate yourself to motivate other people, to inspire people to sort of work towards the company's goals, especially at such an unprecedented time?
The first thing we did was to create flexibility in the work environment. We just created this flexibility to make sure people are able to spend time with their families, and people are also able to share time equally between loved ones and the work. So that flexibility created a lot of empathy, and people were able to continue to deliver their best. You choose to come to work in the office, you choose to work at home. For some frontline guys, that ladies and men that couldn't work from home, we give them enough protection equipment to continue working from wherever they had to work from. But more importantly, I know some companies, stopped some benefits for the employees. We did stop any of the benefits. We actually even paid bonus during the crisis. We paid our bonus during the crisis. We promoted people during the crisis. We gave salary increase during the crisis. So we did everything that we have done normally. Not because we had the results, but we felt that was the right time to really show some empathy towards the employees. And our obligation is only towards the employees. You also owe your stakeholders a lot of obligation. The people in your community, which is why we donated about 70 million naira to Lagos State to use in feeding people. We bought PPE equipment for nurses as well. So it's just a multi-stakeholder approach we took. And we figured what is necessary to support every key stakeholder. And we did it within our value, within our affordability system. So I think that created a lot of feel good for the business. And I must confess, we're still growing. We're growing very, very despite the crisis. because you need, you're as good as the quality of the people working for you. So people are motivated to continue to deliver good results. So I'm very pleased with the results we delivered. Despite the fact that we had a very bad April, we've overcome the bad April. I must thank my colleagues for doing a fantastic job despite this crisis.
Thank you very much. Sorry, just to let everyone know, you can either drop questions in the chat box or you can raise your hands. So it might be easier to just drop the questions in the chat box. And while I wait, another question from me again, which just speaks to sharing your vulnerabilities. I think abroad, it might be easier for leadership to share their vulnerabilities. Again, speaking for myself and just speaking as when I was growing into a leadership role, there is a belief that as a leader, you must always be strong. You can't show signs of weakness to the people that you lead. How do you sort of manage that?
I think it's a sign of weakness, to be honest, for you not to show your vulnerability. It's only a weak leader that will pretend to be God, because I'm not God. People do make mistakes. So the way to do that is to debrief failure. And when you are confronted with superior logic, the information, just replace what you've said. No, you are not God. Data, let facts and change your views. And that's the way we have ESCO every week, every Tuesday. Sometimes I come to the meeting with a preconceived idea. I get to the meeting, new logic, new data is put on the table. I change my mind. Once you don't have any ego, once you are human, once you are not God, is a reflection of your inner strength to be able to say, you know what, I made a mistake last week, or you're talking better sense. And a good leader would actually surround himself with better folks anyway. I mean, how easy can your life be if you have guys who are smarter than you? That's the only way you can deliver a good performance and have a proper work-life balance. You can't know everything. I define it as a leader who's got one or two course expertise. I know a lot about accounting, a lot about selling, some about engineering, but I don't know a lot about it. So I rely on my other leaders to really fill in the gaps. And also a leader should know a little about everything, deep about one or two things, so that I can have a very good discussion in your boardroom. So being vulnerable is a sign of strength for me. It shows a human being.
I would learn to be more vulnerable. Okay, so we have some questions coming in. I have here from Adam: how has Airtel managed the mental well-being of its employees, especially women who have taken on a larger burden, working, managing the home, teaching the kids? How has the company managed that? Not just general mental well-being, but that of women.
Okay, the first thing we did was this flexibility that gave people opportunity to do a proper work-life balance. Every now and then, we also have this virtual workout that you connect them online. We bring a trainer, they teach how to have the mental stability, how to have a mental balance. It's like a workout, a virtual workout, where people just come and you show yourself what you're doing. Beyond that, we also have a few women mentors that they mentor other women, so that they're able to share what is common among the women. So our women support program is centered around well-living, by having this exercise that everybody attends, not only women, but more importantly, having other women mentor the other women. That's one thing that we try to encourage, that women can have this small communities where they can discuss issues, discuss ideas, and come back as to what would make the workplace a much more profitable place for them to have a life, a proper balance between taking care of the family and taking care of the livelihood.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We've got another question from Victor. He says, can you please shed some light on conserving cash, considering the fact that you did all you would usually do, and including donations?
Okay.
I think a lot more was expected of us last year.
Yeah, I have a lens that I used to look at various expenses. If the money you are spending is going to increase revenue, I have rarely touched it. But the money that you want to spend is probably got a longer term return. I would call those ones in the short term because we just not very uncertain terms, regulations change. So for expensive longer term impact, I tend to be a lot more critical on them during a crisis. But for things that have shorter time impact, are you going to see the outcome tomorrow? You're going to see the outcome in 2 or 3 days' time. I don't cut down any on such expenses. And it's not a one-man show. It's something I encourage every leader in my team to do. That if you don't spend the money, what's going to happen? If you can't explain a very negative outcome, then I call the expenses out.
Okay, thank you. We have a comment here from Okwat. He says, many thanks to the CEO for a very simple and transparent conversation. I would like him to please drop some hints on team engagement from a very practical perspective.
Okay. Team engagement is something that I have a slightly different view on. I know I disagree with my HR director on going somewhere to spend the weekend and try and bond. I think you bond every day during office hours. But I always defer to my HR directors when they say, the finance team, they want to go to have a session a weekend. For my network team, they want to go to somewhere to just bond, and I don't have very strong faith in those type of bonding. I think the bonding that works is the one that will happens in the office when you look out for each other, when you're bound together by a common outcome, when you're bound together by a common result. I think that bonding is a lot more stronger than the bonding you do outside work. It's a different view, and I understand why some people like to go someplace to go and spend the weekend and try and become friends. It's good if you're friends with somebody and you work in the same place. It's not a necessary condition for success in the workplace, by the way. People choose their friends whatever they want their friends to be. Some don't want to have a very close relationship in the office. I respect that. But for me, I think the best place for you to bond, for you to share the common vision is the results, the values you share in the workplace. But I don't stop those who think that going to have a session in having a session in Abuja is also going to create a stronger team. I support it. Personally, I just don't have a lot of faith in such outside work engagements.
Okay. We're going to have to take 3 more questions, and we'll have to move to the next speaker. Apologies to everyone. So my next question is from Shola. He says, I like your 3-lens grid to vet integrity for your actions and decisions. For when you may need to take the difficult decisions like stopping the project, which may be dear to people's hearts, letting people go, if and when you do get to that bridge. I'm trying to understand. I guess his question is, what do you do when you get to that bridge? To introduce our second speaker, Mr. Stefan Locke. Please forgive me if I pronounced your name incorrectly. He is currently the CEO of the World Federation of Advertisers, and he's been in that role since November 2003. During his tenure, he has been able to quadruple corporate membership and has extended the WFA's network to 60 countries, significantly reinforcing their presence in the world's fastest growing advertising markets. Before joining WFO, he worked for L'Oreal in Paris and Brussels. Welcome, and thank you very much. So I'm just going to hand over to you now.
Thank you very much, Alero. Can you hear me? Excellent.
Yes, we can.
It's a pleasure to join you remotely. I'm talking here from my home, actually, in Brussels, where I've been confined for the last 12 months. It's a very unusual period for me too. Being the CEO of the World Federation of Advertisers usually implies being a lot on the road, and I certainly miss the opportunity to talk and meet with marketers all around the world. I remember my visit to Lagos, attending the ADVAN conference, I think must have been 5 or 6 years ago. And I very much enjoyed my time in Lagos and being with Nigerian marketers, I was particularly impressed by the energy, the creativity, the passion, and the professionalism also in the Nigerian market. I'd like to specifically acknowledge ADVAN. ADVAN is actually one of our 60 national association members in the world, alongside associations in Morocco, Kenya, South Africa, UK, Russia, US, China, Japan, Australia. So the 60 largest ad markets are in WFA membership through their national associations. So these are basically the sister organizations of ADVAN. And additionally, we have in our membership 125 of the world's largest brands, so brands with a global footprint, you know, from Coca-Cola to Airbnb, from Red Bull to Adidas and Nike. So that is basically what WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, is. So for those of you who are not yet familiar with our organization, we bring together brand owners at a global level. We are the umbrella organization of ADVAN at a global level, and we help support and champion brands at a global level. Now, you asked me to talk to the subject of strategic leadership in turbulent times, and I was really listening with a lot of interest to Olusegun and his very wise, very humble, and very authentic pieces of advice in terms of what leadership in turbulent times means. I'd like to give it a spin which is potentially a bit more marketing industry spin in terms of what it means to be a strategic leader in turbulent times. And so the way I'd like to talk about that is actually in three parts, and I'm aware that time is limited, so I'll get to the main points relatively succinctly. One is I'd like to talk about turbulent times. So why are those times turbulent in Nigeria and in globally? Two is I'd like to talk about the strategic challenges which require leadership in our industry, and there are a few really big ones in front of us. And then I'd like to conclude by highlighting the importance of addressing some of those challenges collectively through ADVAN in Nigeria and through WFA globally. Okay. Now, turbulent times. I think we all agree that these are unheard times. I haven't yet met a single business leader or marketing leader who had actually ever planned for that type of situation where basically the world comes to a halt through a global pandemic. When we do global conference calls and video calls right now, we have people in Paraguay, in Brazil, in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Tokyo, in Japan, in Beijing, all sitting on those calls and all in an exactly same situation, which means basically confined at home and working from home. It's in a way, it's such a unique situation which unifies to some extent the world, and certainly the marketing leaders confronting real-time exactly the same type of constraints and challenges in front of them. Now, that incredible situation has clearly economic impacts. I was looking at the data. The Nigerian economy has shrunk by 4% in 2020 and is going to probably grow by plus 1.7% in 2021. So not fully recovering before end of this year. And the situation actually at the global level is very, very similar. So the global GDP has shrunk by minus 4.9%, and the expected growth rate in 2021 will not fully compensate for that decrease. So we're really looking at a year and a half, 2 years at least, to actually come back to the level of end of 2019. So a huge disruption. Now, disruption like these have not impacted all the sectors in the same manner. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. You know, in WFA, we have 16 different sectors which are represented. So we have the telecoms business, which overall has been doing actually relatively well. And I was interested to hear that Airtel Nigeria is actually doing relatively well in the current circumstances. We are hearing from fast-moving consumer goods that although their portfolio may have been impacted differently, overall they seem to be doing relatively well. We have technology and pharma businesses which are going through the roof in terms of business, and then we have entire categories which have come to a halt, leisure and travel, etc. So very different types of impacts per company and per sector. So a huge disruption in a way, economic disruption, and at the same time, a huge acceleration. So while the world comes to halt, it has in a way freed and kickstarted an energy to adjust and adapt, which is unheard of. And just an example, the penetration rate of e-commerce in the US end of 2019 was at 15%, 15%. Within 3 months of the pandemic, that penetration rate has moved from 15 to 25% within 3 months. And so in 3 months, we have seen an increase in e-commerce, which all the specialists of the industry were forecasting would take place over 10 years. So as if we pushed a fast forward button in terms of adjustment to this situation. So I'll leave it there. So turbulent times, definitely. A crisis, yes, but I'd say crisis. I like the way the Chinese look at the term crisis. So there's a word in Mandarin, crisis, which means threat and opportunity. So it's actually two concepts sitting in the same word, and that's exactly what the crisis is all about. It disrupts. It puts a lot of things at threat. At the same time, it creates opportunities, and that's what we're going through. Now, from an industry perspective, from a marketing industry perspective, when you look at the sort of big challenges in front of us, there are a few big ones at the global level, and I think quite a few of them are equally relevant in Nigeria. But I'm going to give you the sort of global perspective. You asked me to bring in the global agenda. So from a global marketing agenda, let me just mention the sort of big issues in front of us. One is measurement. Okay. So in most markets around the world, including Nigeria, we are still measuring media spend in a media-centric manner. Okay, so we're looking at TV audience rates, we're looking at newspaper circulation, we're looking at digital impressions, we're looking at these things in silos. Now there are good reasons for that, because that's how those measurements have been built gradually, and that it reflects also a historic evolution of the media industry. But in today's day and age, where at the global level, digital spend is more than 50% for the first time ever at the global level, there's no way we're going to continue as marketers to measure in siloed manners, because we're incapable today of knowing whether someone has seen our ad on TV prime time, in Facebook, in YouTube. We're absolutely unable, and therefore we're not unable, and we keep just targeting people, hoping for the best. That is simply not acceptable anymore. And so the industry, under the leadership of WFA, has engaged in a cross-media measurement effort. We've agreed global principles, and we're working on bringing them to life, with 2 pilot projects probably going live this year in the UK and the US. So a really big one, which requires brand owner leadership in order to materialize. Another big one is data. We all agree that data is the new oil, at least from a marketing perspective. Companies are incredibly keen to better know their clients in order to be more relevant to them, and in order to be more targeted in the way they talk to them and they shape their offers. We are seeing data protection legislation appear in many markets, and we welcome them, provided they're balanced. But we do welcome them, because we need to be striking this balance between what brand owners require in terms of data, which allows them to be more relevant and more targeted and more accountable, and what consumers are comfortable with. In the end, brand owners can only thrive if what they do is acceptable and welcomed by consumers. Otherwise, it's a lose-lose. Yeah, and so getting that right is key. And we're seeing the data protection legislation emerge in many countries. Additional to that, there's a question of data ethics. So there are lots of ways of using data which today are not regulated, and it'll take 10 years before they're being regulated. But individual marketers need to ask themselves, is the way I'm using this data, that knowledge, is that fair? Is that ethical? Is it passing the red face test if ever it was revealed? And increasingly, marketers will have to be asking themselves those questions if they want to protect the reputation of their brands longer term and build that level of trust and confidence with consumers. That's a second big issue on which we're working, and where many marketers are telling us that they need guidance from us. A third big one, which has been a lot in the press and still is around harmful content and hate speech. We've all followed the US elections, and I think Nigeria has probably its own sort of challenges in terms of seeing harmful content and hate speech proliferate on some of the social platforms and creating real world harm in society. Now, you could say, look, that's not our thing. We're in advertising. It's not our responsibility. I would challenge that. Brand owners and advertising revenues sustain business models of social media platforms. And therefore, 99% of Facebook revenues are advertising. 85% of revenues of Google are advertising. Therefore, brand owners need to be asking themselves, is it acceptable for me to keep investing on platforms if the way harmful content is being managed doesn't meet societal expectations? And so that has been the starting point for a big effort you may have picked up, which is called the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which WFA has set up, where we are actually working with platforms to agree new standards, new processes for them to deal with harmful content and hate speech much faster and in a much more accountable manner. We also know that when brands appear inadvertently next to harmful content, it impacts the brand reputation. So there's both a societal obligation, but there's also brand rationale for making sure that we are doing a much better job at demonetizing harmful content on platforms. And then there's diversity inclusion, which again is big in the US, but is also big in many other regions, often under different angles. But this notion, and I was interested to see Alicia Gunnar congratulating ADVAN on its leadership. The fact that you've managed to bring together a senior leadership that is balanced in terms of gender, I think is a very good sign that the industry wants to be representative of a progressive approach to the industry. There's a lot of work to be done, both in the way we showcase society in our ads. There's plenty of evidence showing that we are still very conservative and in a way very backward looking in the way we sort of showcase society, but then also in terms of decision-making process, both in marketing, in brand companies, as well as in agencies, where we're still not necessarily reflecting what is an increasingly diverse society, whether that's in Europe, whether that's in the US, in Latin America, and Asia, and probably also in Africa. And then the last challenge I would just like to put on your radar, and which is going to be our top priority in 2021 and many years to come, is marketing and climate change / sustainable development. We think that once we're out of the pandemic, the world is going to be demanding from industry sectors, including from marketing, how it is compatible with societies which seek to become more sustainable, in particular from an environmental point of view. And we think that the marketing industry is still very far from having a credible response to that. And so we're going to be launching, and that is a scoop, we're going to be launching a big initiative at our Global Marketer Week between April 20 and 22. It's going to be remote, so you're welcome to attend. We're going to be launching a big global initiative in that field. And let me conclude with my third section, which is where does ADVAN come in and where does WFA come in? The challenges which require strategic leadership of the industry, which I just mentioned, no one individually will be able to solve them. Even the largest advertisers globally, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, or in Nigeria, Coca-Cola, Airtel, and others, individually cannot solve them because they don't have the scale. They need to do that collectively. And it needs to be led in many cases by brand owners. They need to take back control and take ownership of those challenges. And so that's going to be really important that there is a sort of collective effort to do that. Let me also say that Interestingly, 2020 turned out to be the best year in history of WFA. So we're 67 years old, and it was our strongest year ever. Because what we found out is in these unprecedented times, marketers don't have a clue. They need to be learning as they move forward, and they require this ability to speak very openly, very candidly, very honestly, very humbly with their peers in order to be building on the collective knowledge and experience and views of their peers. And that is a very important role which ADVAN will continue to play in the years to come, because as we venture into this new territory, there's going to be a requirement to be able to learn from peers in order to cut down on trial and error, and in order to be finding solutions that are bigger than any individual brand owner is. And I'll leave it here and hand back to Alira.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was extremely insightful. As per usual, I'm going to start off by asking questions. But to everyone who's listening, if you could please just drop your questions into the chat so I can ask them. So I'm going to speak or ask a question around, it's not really around harmful content and hate speech, but what we saw that was extremely prevalent during the pandemic, and we still see it today, is, like you've said, a lot of hate speech, a lot of harmful content. As the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine is now out, getting to certain countries, not reaching all countries across the world, what do you think the role of marketing, brands, private companies, what do you think our role is as leaders in terms of just ensuring the right vaccine message is put out? And when I say this, it's because there's a lot of harmful content around the vaccine. The vaccine is bad for you. The vaccine is going to do this to you. There are a lot of people who are undecided, but what they do is they go online, and that is the information that they're getting. And based on that, they don't want to get a vaccine. As brands, Mr. Gusman has talked about the fact that we must be good citizens. So all of a sudden, we must look beyond selling our products. So what role do we have to play in ensuring that the right vaccine message goes out and people do take the vaccines?
Yeah, so I think there are two areas in particular where brands can play a role. One is, as I said, making sure that platforms are much more effective at getting rid of the disinformation and hold them accountable to that. So we're going to be announcing in April a framework where we measure the amount of harmful content present on each of those platforms in a manner that helps compare them and helps track over time whether things are getting worse or getting better. Okay, today we don't have that. Today we are absolutely unable to quantify the problem, and therefore we're not able to hold them accountable. That's going to be, I think, a big change, because when it becomes public, the pressure on individual platforms to make sure that they get better is going to be significantly higher. So I think that's very, very important. Additionally, I think brand owners have a duty to make sure that they don't monetize unintentionally harmful content, that their ads don't appear next to harmful content, because that just gives additional credibility to those misleading informations. And then finally, I think individual marketing leaders, I'm just thinking, for example, of the CEO of Airtel Nigeria, who are personalities with integrity, reputation, etc. Also with respect to their employees. If they can have themselves, as he mentioned in his speech, so very honest conversation with employees, and explain that he will have the how should I say, that he will be vaccinated, and explain why. That can also be a very powerful way to lead by example. That these would be the sort of leadership initiatives I would mention.
Okay, and then the last question from me, and then I'll pass on to everyone else, is you'd spoken about using data on ethics. Could you just expand on that a bit more? What you meant by?
Yeah, so there are two ways of looking at data. One is, was this data collected in the right manner? So did we have proper consent, etc.? And so that's, in a way, that's a legal hurdle. And then the question is, how do I use that data in order to promote my business? For example, you could imagine that a telecoms company has information about a young female adult being somewhere stranded in a dangerous neighborhood on a Friday night and running out of battery on her phone. Sorry, not the telecoms company, an app, say Uber, yeah? And on the basis of those insights, they have all that information they got was absolutely legal. They could decide to apply different price policies in terms of sending an Uber, no? So it's a terrible example, but it's just to show that it's not because you've collected that data legally that the way you're using it is ethical. And so that's where you need to be able to pass this test of, am I actually behaving in a manner that meets the standards of the company and that I would be comfortable to explain in public? And there are going to be lots of those users of data going forward, given the importance of data, which will require a very clear, coherent, and public company policy so that companies can be held accountable for the way they use that data. And that's where we want to help brand owners start thinking about it and start creating policies.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so just looking at the questions. So I've got here from Osamede. He says, how would the WFA help the growth of the marketing profession in Africa?
Look, I think I'm a big believer in sharing knowledge and experience, and it is my experience that it's a network of brands. So you have actually incredibly creative initiatives, incredibly insightful initiatives, incredible talent in plenty of different places around the world, and that's exactly what WFA is about. So we don't see ourselves as a global organization which starts sharing knowledge. We see ourselves as a hub which connects brands all around the world and which is in a position to get the smartest ideas, the best experiences shared across the network on whatever subject markets encounter. And that's really it's this diversity which makes it so useful. No? And so we are particularly interested in some of the creativity and the technological applications of apps in Africa. We've seen some really interesting case studies in South Africa and Kenya. That's the sort of thing where we want to be sort of accelerating the exchange rather than sort of just say we're going to be sharing experience. No, we're connectors in a way. That's how you should look at us. And by the way, I'd like also to say that our commitment to Africa runs deep. We have Bunmi, who's our regional vice president Africa, who I see here on the call, who's actually representing ADVAN and Nigerian marketers on our executive committee, and who's part of those global conversations. Because increasingly, when you talk about these issues, they are actually of a global scale, even if they may have different angles country by country.
Okay. So I've got a question for you, but I see Mr. Ogunsanya is back with us, so I'm just going to ask him a quick question. It's probably more for me. Someone asked what I usually don't understand. So it says, good evening, sir. As a chartered accountant, would you recommend incremental budgeting or zero-based budgeting for marketing, considering the ever-changing external environment marketing has to deal with? How important is understanding balance sheet items for a chief marketing officer that would like to become a chief executive officer one day? Oh, you're mute.
I'm a big fan of zero budgeting, I must confess, because I think if you recycle what you've done last year and just put a 5, 10, 15% growth on it, you're not going to be able to uncover value. So I prefer zero budgeting, start from ground zero, see what the activities are, measure the outcomes, stop or continue. So my preference is for zero budgeting. I also believe that anyway, I mean, you are the face of the business, you represent the values of the business. I don't think there's any stronger face than the CEO. And I think the path to becoming a CEO is not only one track. Like I described earlier, I think for you to be, or I believe for you to be a successful CEO, you must know one or two things very, very deeply. You must be an expert in one or two things. Either you're an expert in finance, you're an expert in marketing, you're an expert in networking, technical, then you know a little about every other thing to succeed. Because you must be able to add value to any discussion. In my own case, I'm privileged. I train as a chartered accountant. I'm an engineer, so I'm able to add value to network discussion, to IT discussion. And my finance guy is probably not the best guy because he can't, I mean, I know a lot about finance. And because I worked for Coca-Cola for over 17 years in very senior roles, I know a lot about marketing and distribution. So I can say probably I'm a lot more privileged than most other people, CEOs. But in essence, just figure out one thing you want to do very, very well and be very deep, become an expert in that one or two areas, and have a working knowledge of other areas and hire the best folks. It's very essential. Get the best folks in other areas to really bring you up in areas where you're not very knowledgeable about. That's my own formula for being a successful CEO in terms of knowledge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Stefan, another question for you from Yinka. It says, or he's asking, what is next for marketing in the next post-COVID age? And would you say marketers are ready?
So I see two big challenges. One is micro and the other one is macro. Micro is the marketing transformation, so digital transformation, which is going to be requiring an organizational transformation, a cultural transformation in companies in order to be adjusting to a digital first world. And that is going to be requiring quite an extensive reinvention of the marketing organization. That's at the micro level, at the company level. And at the macro level, I think it's getting used to the fact that in today's day and age, you can't silo anymore what is marketing and what is society. It's one and the same. Okay, so you're in a food business or you're Coca-Cola. No, you launch your latest product. People may respond to you about obesity among children, or they may respond to you about advertising to children, or they may respond to you about recycling of plastic, etc. So as a marketer, you will have to get used to this idea that your stakeholders are not only your consumer, they're society at large, and consumers are also citizens, and they're going to be increasingly demanding that beyond producing and producing safe and effective products, that you are driven by values which meet societal aspirations. No, and I think so. That's why I was talking about climate change, sustainable development, etc. Increasingly, products and brands will be measured against those expectations, and I think that's a big challenge. Yeah, it's very exciting, by the way.
Another question for you. Shola says, very insightful presentation. Can you please tell us the two most impactful books you have read on any topic and why you would advise us as marketing leaders to read them?
Wow.
But I can try to think about it.
Yeah, let me think about it. Do you have another one? I promise I'll respond to that. But I need to think.
Focus on your question. Okay, so I have from Obam, what are the 3 critical areas for leaders to cover that will help deliver short-term business needs while the team or organization are going through a turbulent time? That's from Mr.
The 3 top areas that a leader should cover during the crisis, right?
That will help to deliver short-term business needs during turbulent times.
The first one is a focus on your customer. You must be able to understand their changing requirements and find ways of reaching them. So you can't go wrong by focusing on the customer. That will be top of my agenda during the turbulence and during the normal time. That's why we are there. You must focus on the customer. The second thing is on your employees. I mean, sometimes we keep saying they are the best asset, but we don't show it in what we do. And I keep saying that there's no way the quality of an organization can exceed the quality of its employees. So sometimes, I mean, I see a lot of lip service being paid to this, but you must be extremely focused on creating a good environment for your employees to deliver their best during a crisis or during a normal time. So that's the second thing that I would suggest you do. And the third thing is what I said is about cash. You really need me to be very spot on the cash, conserve cash, spend it wisely. So one, focus on customer, meet their requirements, understand their changing needs, their changing channels. Second, on your employees, give them a good environment to continue to thrive. And thirdly, make sure you conserve enough cash to survive the bad time.
Okay. Thank you. Stefan, have you thought of your two books?
Yeah, so there are two books which come to mind. Yeah, one is a book which I read when I was adolescent, must have been 16 or 17 years old, which is called Shogun by James Clavell. And it is about the first encounter between Europeans and Japanese in the 16th century. And I found it absolutely fascinating because it highlighted the differences of civilization and cultures meeting for the first time, and how from a sort of initial martial confrontation, people on both sides start getting beyond the sort of initial differences to discover the incredible wealth and sophistication of their respective cultures. And I think it helped shape my appetite and my curiosity for the world and its diversity. And this notion that there are always different ways of looking at the same thing, depending on what your history is and where you come from. Yeah, and I think that was an important book for me. That's very personal, but I think that it helped shape a bit who I am. Yeah, I still have the book in my in my living room, by the way. And the other one is a very personal one. It's a cartoon book which was drawn by my former boss, who was my mentor. So I had three mentors. I had the chance of having three mentors in my professional life so far, and one of them he was the CEO of a business unit at L'Oreal, and I was the marketing director. And he was incredibly talented. No, he had 59 good ideas per minute, and one very bad, but no, so incredible good, lots of good ideas. And he just had everything. No, he was this moving star. He was a star in L'Oreal. He was going right for the CEO job. And one day he just leaves the organization from a day to another. And I said, how on earth can you do that? I mean, everyone just respects you so much, and you're just on such a. And he said, no, all what I've done has been for my dad. I wanted to prove, etc., etc. But it's not me. And he went to do something totally different. He became in charge of entertainment programs on the main private TV channel in France, and then became a very successful audiovisual producer. And so he did a cartoon book for me, which summarized our 4 years together in L'Oreal. And he was saying, additionally, he was a cartoonist. So in meetings he was just constantly drawing even the most senior leaders. And I found he had this talent of understanding the essence of people, and because when you draw a cartoon, you need to be picking the one thing which people are, and so I've also kept that this ability of getting to understand what drives people and who people are. So these are probably the two books which are emotionally important for me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And another question for you from Jose. He's asking, there's hardly data on Africa in the WFA webinars. How do we ensure the data on Africa features in the global marketing development course?
Yeah, so I mean, there's indeed less data on Africa. We don't see ourselves as data collectors or data aggregators, because there are plenty of organizations which are much better at doing that, and they do that for profit. So we don't see that as the main added value of WFA. Our added value is to highlight case studies which are inspiring, things which marketers are doing in markets, which are novel, which are forward-looking, which are progressive, and which can inspire others. We are not academics, we're not there to teach theories. We're there to inspire marketers to stand on the shoulders of giants, to be to be emulating the best in class. That's what we do, and I think that's really where we have appetite. And I would certainly welcome if there were more sustained exchanges between ADVAN and WFA to share with us what stands out in Nigeria. And I would also be very keen to come back to Nigeria one day when you have a major event or conference, etc. Because I think there are limits to remote. I mean, remote on the one hand is very exciting because I've started my day today in Singapore. I've spent 2 hours in Singapore with the team this morning. I'm ending my day in Nigeria. I'm still going to the UK before I'm ending my day. And so it's very exciting, but all this is very virtual, And if you want to get a sense of what marketing is all about, what creativity is all about, what personality is all about, you also need that one-on-one exchange. And I'm absolutely convinced that post-pandemic, we may not be moving back to the pre-pandemic world, but we certainly will need that sort of one-on-one exchanges and physical presence in order to be able to share that knowledge and those insights.
Okay. Thank you very much. So final question, and this is for Mr. Ogunsanya. It's from Emmanuel Agu. He's asked, are there positive opportunities that came up as a result of this pandemic, and how has Airtel benefited from such opportunities?
Oh, it's a bittersweet situation. I don't think anybody should benefit from a bad situation. But I mean, any adverse condition would also bring some opportunities for new ways of doing business. Before COVID, we wanted to deepen our digital channels. We wanted folks to buy airtime using their bank account, using applications, using the web, so that we don't have a lot of middle people in between. We're struggling around 15-20% of our airtime, of our revenue coming from physical recharge papers, from physical channels. 3-4 months into COVID, we have about 40%. We doubled 40% of our recharges coming through. Unbelievable. We struggled in 4-5 months. We actually achieved 40% of our recharges coming through the digital channels. It's just, awesome. That is one thing that came out of a bad situation. The second thing that came out of it is the appetite of our people for data. The appetite is insatiable. Anytime we expand the pipe, we expand the network, it just gets filled up again. It shows that, people actually have a very large appetite for being online for whatever they choose to do, either for learning, either for entertainment, either for even for whatever it is. It's unbelievable how much data we're consuming in this country. So that is second revelation of COVID. People work from home, people work from anywhere. If you want to connect, you need internet. And that is what we said, that's what we provide. So that's one good thing that came out of this unfortunate pandemic for us. And the last one, which I like to mention, is about the fact that work is being redefined. Workplace, what is the workplace? There's no workplace anymore. You can work from anywhere now. It just shows how a trigger can actually accelerate a journey. About a year ago, people would invest in real estate, people would invest in offices. Now, all the major technology companies, so maybe we're very different anyway, all the major technology companies are talking about people working from anywhere. Google, Facebook. I read an announcement by one of our competitors 2 days ago that actually deepening and offering employees to work from anywhere. That's the new reality. It shows that real estate that we all think we need, we actually don't need that much real estate. So those are the three clear things. We save money on real estate. We save money from channel, long channel to a very direct to customer. That's what I'm talking about. And we've increased our data offerings, either data to watch movies, data to attend school. We more or less like a replacement industry. We're replacing so many things. We're replacing entertainment. We're replacing transportation. We're replacing money. We're replacing banking. The possibilities are just huge. But this pandemic has brought a certain urgency about how quickly we need to mine those opportunities.
Okay. Thank you very much. There are lots of comments in the chat box. Just people saying thank you. It's been a really good session, not just for me, but for everybody who's listened in. Just two, or maybe three comments that I'll make that I've taken out, which is that we must be good citizens as brands, as people. We must be human. And something that Stefan had said about disruption, but at the same time that there was disruption, there were just so many opportunities, and we took advantage of those opportunities. So hopefully that is a message to all of us, that regardless of the challenges that we face today, that we succeeded last year, we can do so much more this year as leaders, in the work that we do with our brands and the work that we do with our teams. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Osamede, who is going to give us the closing remarks, and then we'll shut down. Thank you. Osamede, thank you.
Thank you, Alero. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Alero. I would just like to be brief, just to say a big thank you to the two guest speakers, to the CEO of Airtel and the CEO of WFA. And I also want to just please appeal to them to please keep supporting ADVAN and supporting the marketing team in Nigeria. To the CEO of Airtel, he's always ready and willing to honor our invitations whenever we do. So I'm very, very, very grateful. From the rest of the team in ADVAN, from the executives and the members of ADVAN, we say a very big thank you. And to Stefan, I would just like to make a very big request. We're having a challenge getting to arrive at the 1 naira of advertising, what it contributes to the GDP. I know you have done this for Europe, and I would say with the ESCO, they'll be coming to you for your help. Please kindly help us, because it will, as you, part of your presentation was about sustainability. We need to show what we are doing in the economy as marketers. So not that we're just advertising, but what advertising does to the GDP of Nigeria. So that's, Stefan would really like you to help us with that.
Yeah, let's connect on that separately. Happy to have a chat with you or with Ediri as a follow-up.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefan. I would like to say a big thank you to Alera for doing the wonderful job and moderating. Well done, Alera, nice one. Each time you do this, I'm always impressed. And also a big well done to the ADVAN ESCO. I would just say, if you do, we'll ask for more. So please, we need more from you. Well done, guys. And to all CMOs who have called in and participated, I would just appeal that you keep supporting ADVAN. And as Mr. Gusaya said, you cannot do it alone, but collectively we can do it together as ADVAN. So a big thank you to everybody, and well done to everybody, and thanks for being part of this.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Keep well.
Thank you, everybody. Well done.